Wait, there was a DC Star Wars crossover that almost happened? Grab your coffee. Let's talk about it. Now, if you go back to 2017, we're talking about the comic book world where there have been crossovers between DC and Marvel and some other things like that. And here's what was pitched and not gone through with, which I actually, spoiler, I think it was a good idea they didn't do this because of, well, many reasons. Here's what it says. Superman almost had the chance to heat Vision a lightsaber. What a cruel world. This was written on October 1st, and this is coming from comicbook.com. I'll throw the link down in the description below. It says this: over the years, DC has found a way to cross its superheroes over with Godzilla, Aliens, Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, and many more beloved properties and characters. Yeah, really, this is just opportunities to try and sell comics when they're running out of ideas. Instead of coming up with new, better storylines in the DC universe, they're just like, hey, there's this popular thing over here. Let's see if we bring that popular thing with this popular thing to make something that's probably terrible. One that apparently was just too hard to do, Star Wars. If you've been a longtime reader of the site, you likely know that Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross, the creative team behind the best-selling Marvel's miniseries, almost made a Superman Star Wars crossover about a decade ago. At some point, Ross even shared some of the artwork online, but now, former DC editor and publisher Dan DiDio, is that how you say his name? Maybe, I don't know, has chimed in with his version of what happened to the project. I find it interesting that at a random Comic-Con, Tampa Bay Comic-Con that happened just last month, or end of August, a little over a month ago, that this would even come up. This isn't really, a big story, but it definitely gets me thinking about, is this even possible? And I'll share some of that thought at the end. Let's get through. He says, speaking at Tampa Bay Comic Convention, DiDio took responsibility for canceling the project, saying that it just didn't make sense and wasn't worth it. Now, this is in complete opposite as to what Kurt had said. Back in 2017, he posted that didn't get much traction, only 15 likes. But he said, Phil Hester asked this question: if you really want comics to break your heart, go to a Comic-Con, ask a creator about their favorite rejected pitch. And here Kurt shares his. On another front, Alex Ross and I were geared up to do Superman Star Wars, but the corporate parties involved couldn't agree on how to. And he says even further under that, how to what? Divvy up the money. That's not exactly a rejection, but it's a dead project. So was this really about who gets the money? Is that really what this was about? DiDio shares more. I was brought up a DC Universe and Star Wars crossover. DiDio explained there was fighting over what you could do and couldn't do, and who gets the better shot, and who gets the hero moment. It wasn't worth it. Honestly, it just wasn't worth it. The creator who came on board got really angry because he brokered the deal and brought it to us, DiDio added, referring to Busiek, who publicly expressed frustration about the project's failure. I just didn't want to do it at that time because it didn't make sense. Back in 2017, so it doesn't make sense. There is not, let's be honest, none of these crossovers really make sense. But if you're looking at the galaxy far, far away and Superman, there really is no crossover to be had. What was going to be the issue? Like, we're talking about two completely different universes that have just completely different rules. I just don't see Superman and Darth Vader or Superman and Luke Skywalker, whatever it might have been. I don't think it would have worked. I don't think it would have worked well at all. And for Busiek to really tweet out and say it's just about who gets the more money, no, who's the hero, who's the villain, how does the storyline work? If you're talking about in comics, you usually have a hero and a villain. Is it a team up of Skywalker and Superman against Darth Vader? That doesn't make sense. Like, what are we actually doing? Where does this fall in the Star Wars timeline? How does this fit into all these other things? I agree with Didio that it just doesn't make sense. There isn't a path that this would have worked. That isn't to say that I don't think there's some cool things that could happen. I think really cool things could, but I think we're past the point of just doing something cool for content's sake. And that's really what this felt like. It feels like it would just be a money grab to bring together favorite characters from huge IPs just to do a comic book run. And yeah, they might have done it with Aliens and Godzilla and Star Trek, but I don't think Star Wars fans would have gotten on board with this. Continues, back in 2017, comics artist Phil Hester suggested, that was the tweet we mentioned, it seems likely any such negotiations would have happened during the years while Star Wars was at Dark Horse Comics, who published crossovers between Superman and the Aliens franchise, among others. A number of DC Dark Horse crossover trade paperbacks were later made available, reprinting many of those stories for the first time. DC continues to cross over with mid-sized publishers, but it has been several years since the big two last shared characters. The official line is that revenue sharing is too difficult to negotiate, although they did finally reissue the DC vs. Marvel miniseries, as well as a number of other crossover stories between DC and Marvel in a pair of recent omnibus hardcovers. I really don't think... They're saying that maybe the official line is the revenue sharing. I don't think that's the issue. I think you could find a way to make the revenue work. I don't think you can make a way to make these stories work. And admittedly, I'm not a huge comic book guy. I know, surprise. But maybe you are. Maybe you're not. I'm more of a movie novel kind of guy. That's more my speed. But even in this, I'm interested because it's Star Wars, and I'm interested because what happens in the Star Wars universe, I find interesting, even if I don't consume all of that content. And no one's telling you that you have to consume everything. Just read or watch or do what you like. Play the video games you like. You might not like everything, and that's okay. But again, in this crossover, I just, again, don't think it would have made sense. Here it says, Ross is currently crowdfunding a documentary looking behind the scenes at Kingdom Come, a series he developed for DC and then released with Mark Waid on the right scripts. Marvel acquired Star Wars license in 2015, shortly after Disney, Marvel's parent company, acquired Lucasfilm, which produced Star Wars and Indiana Jones movies. Yeah, let's not talk about those. A line of Star Wars-related titles has been a big success for Marvel, and have provided the publishing line with stability in light of recent sales shutdowns, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So, I don't know. Tell me what you think down below. Do you think this would be a good idea? Is this something that could bring life to Star Wars comic universe? I don't think so. I think this would have been seen for exactly what it was, just a quick money grab. I don't see how a storyline like this or a story arc like this would really be all that interesting. And we already know that when Disney really looks at the comics and everything else, they don't really care about the comics. They kind of just put things in the comic universe or the graphic novels or novels that they don't care about. I.e., we're going to get more stories in the comic universe from the Acolyte characters, which that's a whole nother ridiculous problem. But hey, if that's where they want to put it, go put it there. And the people that all signed that petition can go enjoy it there. I think this was a bad idea from the start, and Kurt just can't live with that, so he has to say other things, and that's okay. But I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll see you on the next